If you're learning a language and you're not already proficient in that language, you've probably had the experience of meeting a native speaker of your target language and thinking this would be the perfect time to practice. But before you can get a single word out, a million other thoughts fill your head, most of which are, don't you dare say a word of that language, shut up, just be polite and shut up. Most people, including myself, have had this experience, but I've completely flipped on that. I've gone from being someone who would forget the words for sprechen Sie Deutsch when I met someone called Helmut, to someone who was just the other day in a cafe, and in my defense it was a French cafe, and the waitress there had an accent, and before I'd thought about any other possibilities, I blurted out, "Vous êtes française?" And she looks at me for about 5 seconds and just goes, "No." Okay, sorry, you're the one working in a French cafe with an accent. What am I supposed to assume, that there are other countries in Europe? My point is, I was someone who was scared to speak to native speakers in my second language, and now I speak to them whether they speak that language or not. Progress. If you've ever struggled to get a word out in your target language when you meet a native speaker, this video will help you to overcome that so that you can practice every time you meet a native speaker. Here we go. My first and second pieces of advice go together. The first is, have something that you say every time, no matter what, and practice the living daylights out of it. Don't rely on the same skills that you use in English or your native language, which is just to say whatever comes to mind, because that will not work. When the sweaty palmed moment comes, you can forget the Spanish for hello. Now I know you're thinking, I remember the Spanish for hello, thank you very much. Yeah, that's easy right now while you're sitting on YouTube, but when you meet someone who says, my name is Carlos, you'll be like, Quiero Taco Bell? So, prepare the thing you're going to say, have a native speaker check it, learn it, learn it again, say it again. Do it until you cannot get it wrong. This actually has a lot of hidden benefits for language learning anyway. If you learn something so well that you're saying it in your sleep, that is very good for your language learning, so you should do that anyway. I would recommend that you prepare something a little bit longer than it needs to be, for 3 reasons. The first is that it gives your head time to switch into that language while you're talking to the person, and they won't interrupt you. The second is that it's actually just good for you to learn longer things without pausing anyway. And the third is that it tells your new friend that you are serious about speaking this language. How many French speakers have English speakers say to them, vous êtes française, parlez-vous français, right? They know that that doesn't mean you actually want to speak French to them. It's stupid, they don't think it's funny, no one thinks it's funny actually, stop doing it. But it doesn't tell them that you're serious. Whereas if you say something proper like, tu es français, je prends le français et ce n'est pas très bien encore parce que je l'ai appris depuis seulement 2 mois, that tells them, okay, you are actually serious. You've learned that whole thing, and it helps them to think that you'll be able to understand them if they reply in French. So it tells them that English is no longer necessary, and they will, as a native French speaker or Spanish speaker, whatever your language is, switch into that language without a problem. By the way, obviously that French sentence you just heard was not properly prepared, so it's a case of do as I say, not as I do. I recommend you learn it much better than that. Come up with your sentence, write it in the comments, either in English or your target language. People can get ideas from each other. This is a very good tip. I promise you it will work. Just do it. As I said, the second tip goes with the first one, and this is why you need to learn your prepared sentence so well, and that is, blurt it out before you've had a chance to think about it at all. As soon as you hear that the person is a native speaker of your target language, blurt out your prepared sentence. The reason that you do that is that the longer you wait, the more nervous you will get. People always say to me, I'm always too nervous. You're waiting too long, right? You're going to be nervous. I get nervous as well. But I've learned that that does not go away with time. In fact, it gets worse with time. The sooner you blurt out your sentence, the sooner your nerves will go away, because they swell when you blurt out your sentence, but then they start dying quite quickly because they were only ever there to stop you from saying what you were going to say. They were there to protect you socially. So as soon as you've said your sentence, they're like, well, we lost, and they pack up and go home. And so we come to our third rule, and that is no English or no lingua franca. If there's a language that you both speak that is not your target language, such as English, Do not use that language under any circumstances. Don't use the excuse that what you want to say now is too complicated. No, it isn't. You would be surprised what you can communicate by just picking some words that go with the thing and throwing them at the person. That person is a native speaker of the language. They will figure out what you're trying to say. I've used this technique to talk about how I make homebrew beer in French, back when my French was even worse than it is now, and I do mean bad. The beauty of this is twofold. You're coming as close as anyone ever comes to replicating the experience of a child. A 2-year-old who wants to go to the park to ride their scooter doesn't think, oh, it's too complicated. No, they just keep saying words that they associate with that thing until something works with their parents. Hopefully, your ability to think about how to communicate an idea is a little bit better than a 2-year-old's, and I'd imagine your vocabulary is a bit better as well. The other beautiful thing about this is that using all the communicative means we have, like body language, tone, facial expressions, etc., you can actually gauge whether what you're saying is landing with the other person. And then, when they've understood you, which like I said, they probably will, they will tell you the correct way of saying it. It's just like us when we hear a 2-year-old saying, "Cooter, park, cooter, park," we eventually say, right, you want to go to the park to ride your scooter, right? We tell them exactly the right way of saying it without even realizing that we've done it. That's what a native speaker will do with you if you use this technique. Now, in case you're thinking, well, I'll say my sentence, but then we can just switch back to English and we can switch back and forth between the target language and English. No, that is not going to happen. Once you give a stronger language, let's say English, a look in, it will not be brushed aside. It's too easy to continue speaking English and too hard to switch back to the new language. The other thing is, conversations tend to get more complicated, not simpler. So you will move further and further away from things you can actually say in your target language. Where, as if you stick to the target language, you will only talk about things that you can talk about in that language. That's just how it works. Take it from someone who's learned to speak Swedish. Swedes, of course, speaking excellent English, not quite as good as they think, but still very good. It is dangerous to speak even a word of English because they will jump on any opportunity they get to speak English. Sometimes I've even had to be almost rude in that they speak English to me, I respond in Swedish. They respond in English, I respond in Swedish. And it keeps going like that until eventually they decide it's easier just not to fight with you about which language is being spoken, even if that conversation has to continue in Swedish, which is not as comfortable for anyone involved. They just decide, I'm not going to fight over the language spoken. You probably won't have to do it so many times with any other language. It's only like the ones that people speak English really, really well. But just do it. Be the stronger-willed person and stick to your target language. Step 4 is only for when there are other people present who do not speak that language at all. Obviously, you don't want to be rude to people who don't understand a word of what you or your newfound friend are saying, but you can actually have a bit of fun with this. See if you can ask the native speaker to translate some of what you're saying to the others. It's not as awkward as it sounds, because it sort of becomes a bit of a game, and your friends, let's say they're English speakers, will then ask you things and they'll probably try to make it difficult for you. But that'll be an opportunity to think really hard about what you need to say. And the thing is, you've got an ace up your sleeve, because the native speaker, assuming they speak good English, will translate what you say into better language than that which you used. So you might actually say something with really basic and incorrect language, but when your newfound friend, the native speaker, translates that back into English, it'll probably sound a lot more natural, and your friends will have no idea that that's what happened, so they'll be quite impressed with your language skills. This game's obviously not going to last all night, but it's just a good way of making sure that even when there are other people around, you still include some Spanish or Russian or whatever it is, and that comes in handy because going back to step 1, you want to make sure that your native speaker friend knows that you are serious. The more serious that they think you are, the more that they will try to help you, and the more likely that Russian, Spanish, Chinese, whatever, will become a part of their interaction with you. This is way more important than what resources you're using, or what verb tense you're in, or anything like that. How you are perceived by native speakers of your target language is just about the most important thing. So many Swedish learners say to me, I can't learn Swedish because Swedes won't speak Swedish with me. And I say to them, that is your prerogative to fix, okay? How you are interpreted by Swedish speakers is up to you to change. So, in summary, step 1, prepare your sentence, have a native speaker check it, learn the Scheitung out of it. Step 2, say it before you've had a chance to think about it. As soon as you hear you're talking to a native speaker, say your sentence. Even if you're not sure if they're a native speaker, the worst that can happen is they're not and they don't understand you, they forget all about it. It doesn't matter. Step 3, carry on in that language for as long as humanly possible. Use the simplest words you can use if you need to. Just make sure you stick to that language, because once you go back to English or whatever your common language is, it will be too easy to carry on in that. Step 4, have the native speaker translate to other people if that's necessary. If there are other people who don't understand you there, have them do that, because how you are perceived by the native speaker and by everyone in your life as a learner of that language or a speaker of language or languages is very important. It opens up doors in your life. Has happened to me. It will happen to you. I enjoyed writing this. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Stick around for lots more of this kind of content. I've got lots of language learning videos as well as reviews of foreign language TV series and movies. I'm filming 6 today, so I will have lots of content coming to you in the next 2 weeks. So stick around and subscribe for that. Wherever you are, whatever language you call your own, I hope you've really enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.